There is no referee, no ring, and no rules printed on a card. Just a cleared patch of dirt on the Kansas plains. Two men facing each other in a ring of spectators, and a summer afternoon in 1873. The crowd has money riding on this fight. Not on who falls first, not on who bleeds more. On something more specific than either of those things. Something the two men in the center have already agreed to. Behind them, the saloon is open. The men inside have not set down their drinks to come and watch. They have seen this before. The cattle drive ends after 3 months and 1,000 miles. The Cowboys are lean, sun-scorched, and filthy. Dust worked into the skin of their hands. Boots split from weeks in the stirrups. Clothes worn so long they carry the smell of horse and dried sweat and open grassland. They have not slept in a real bed since March. The sound of the cattle town hits them before the street comes into view. Piano from 3 saloons at once, boots on hollow board floors, the crack of billiard balls through a wall. Now they are in Abilene, Kansas, in the summer of 1871, and the drive is done, and they have wages in their pockets for the first time since spring. The celebration begins with guns. Not outside the city, not in a field at a careful distance. Cowboys ride through the doors of saloons on horseback and fire revolvers into the ceiling. They shoot out lanterns. They fire at the floor near newcomers' boots, which passes as a kind of welcome. The ceiling fills with powder smoke that drifts out through the gaps in the planks above. This is not considered reckless. It is considered routine. It is how a man announces that the season is over and the money has arrived. In 1872, the Abilene City Council passes an ordinance banning the discharge of firearms within city limits. The ordinance does not come because the shooting is unusual. It comes because the ceiling of the Alamo Saloon on Texas Street has been patched so many times that winter air passes through the gaps. By then, the city has already hired a town marshal to enforce the new rule. Today, discharging a firearm within any incorporated U.S. city is a felony charge in every state. In 1871, Abilene, it was Thursday. Everyone watching has someone in their family history who crossed the frontier. A great-grandfather who ran cattle. A grandmother who homesteaded somewhere west of the Mississippi. A name passed down with no story attached to it. Tell me in the comments who it was. A name, a place, a single detail. I want to read everyone. The guns in the saloon ceiling were the gentler half. By 1868, the Kansas Pacific Railroad is laying track west across the Great Plains and needs to feed thousands of workers across hundreds of miles of open country. That year, the railroad hires a 22-year-old former Army scout from LeClaire, Iowa. His name is William Frederick Cody. He has been scouting since his teens, moving across the frontier on horseback since before he was old enough to shave. In the 18 months that follow his railroad contract, Cody kills 4,282 American bison to supply the construction crews. The Kansas Pacific gives him a name to go with the number: Buffalo Bill. What Cody does under contract, the railroad quickly understands can be sold as entertainment. Organized hunting excursions begin within a few years. Passengers, Easterners, British visitors who have crossed the Atlantic specifically for this, railroad executives, land speculators carrying new rifles they have never fired, pay between $3 and $5 a day to board a chartered train out onto the prairie. When the locomotive encounters a herd, it slows. Passengers lean out of windows. Some climb to the roof of the car. The prairie stretches flat to the horizon in every direction. The air smells of hot iron from the rails and the dry, particular sharpness of disturbed grassland. The shooting continues until the ammunition runs out or the herd moves off. The animals left behind, dead and wounded both, stay where they fall. In the fall of 1874, a railroad manager named Guy Potter documents one such morning near Lacon, Kansas. His train is delayed 1 hour and 40 minutes, waiting for a bison herd to cross the track. The brakeman, without any instruction, shoots 13 animals from the caboose while they wait. It is not recorded as an incident, it is recorded as a delay. Between 1872 and 1874, railroad receipts document 1,378,359 bison hides shipped east. The North American bison population in 1850 stands at between 60 and 70 million animals. By the early 1880s, fewer than 1,000 remain. Today, American bison are a federally protected species. Killing one without tribal or federal authorization is a crime. In 1873, a train ticket covered it. The buffalo were not the only animals being turned into an afternoon spectacle. In California, the weekly event at Mission Dolores in San Francisco in 1852 draws crowds by the hundreds. The main attraction is a grizzly bear, chained to a post inside a fenced arena, roped to a bull whose horns have been sheathed. The crowd places bets. Children watch from raised platforms. The card opens with cockfighting. In 1852, the daily Alta California publishes its verdict on what it has witnessed: a vestige of barbarism. The crowds keep coming regardless. Cockfighting is now a felony in all 50 U.S. states. Bear baiting is illegal under animal cruelty statutes in every American jurisdiction. In 1852, San Francisco, it was the Sunday outing. Return to the cleared patch of dirt. The two men in the center have not thrown a punch yet. The crowd is not waiting for a punch. The fighting style common across the frontier, from the Carolinas west through Kentucky and onto the Kansas plains, went by several names: rough and tumble, gouging. The rules were few: no weapons, no referee. Everything else was permitted: kicking a downed man, biting through a nose or an ear, driving a thumb into a cheekbone until something gave. But the agreed-upon measure of victory, the act the spectators had placed their money on, the thing that made a man a local legend, was the extraction of an eye. Not a black eye, not a figure of speech for a hard blow. The literal removal of an opponent's eye from its socket, pressed free by thumb or finger until the eye displaced from the orbit. In April of 1806, a British traveler named Thomas Ashe arrives in Wheeling, Virginia. He has spent 2 years crossing the American frontier, recording what he sees for a book he will publish in 1808 as Travels in America. In Wheeling, he witnesses a scheduled match between a Virginian and a Kentuckian. The fight ends when the Virginian forces his opponent's eye from its socket. The Kentuckian, before surrendering, bites off the Virginian's nose. Ashe records it without alarm, because there is nothing to be alarmed by, not by the standards of what surrounds him. The fight has been scheduled. The bets have been placed. Both men entered the circle knowing the terms. What is remarkable is the scale at which this was ordinary. A South Carolina judge surveying his own courtroom during this same period counts, among the plaintiff, 2 witnesses, and 1 sitting juror, 4 men each missing an eye. Previous fights, previous bets, previous summer afternoons, just like this one. State legislatures begin to respond. North Carolina makes eye extraction a criminal offense in 1746, following 4 deaths tied to related brawling. Virginia's 1772 statute specifically targets gouging, plucking, or putting out an eye, biting, or kicking, or stomping. In Tennessee, a man named Reuben Cheek receives a 3-year sentence in the state penitentiary for gouging out William Maxey's eye. The statutes arrive after decades of the sport. The crowd assembled first. The law came to stop something the frontier had already decided was reasonable entertainment. Today, intentionally destroying another person's eye, in any context, consensual or otherwise, constitutes aggravated battery or mayhem under the criminal code of every U.S. state. In Wheeling, in 1806, Thomas Ashe found a place in the crowd and took notes. That Wheeling match was witnessed, recorded, and published. And still, no statute changed for another generation. There are 100 stories like it that no one ever wrote down. If this one reached you, leave a like. It helps this find someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe if you want to keep walking through this with me. The next one is true, too. The bans arrived slowly and unevenly. The rough-and-tumble statutes came first, state by state through the 1740s into the 1850s, because the injuries were immediate and visible. A man missing an eye was a permanent reminder that followed him into every room for the rest of his life. The animal fighting laws came later. California bans cockfighting in 1905. The last documented wild grizzly bear in California is shot in 1922, which ends the bear and bull fights by extinction rather than legislation. Other states follow through the early 20th century as animal welfare statutes begin to standardize. The bison required near-total elimination. By 1889, naturalist William Hornaday counts 541 wild bison remaining in all of North America. Congress passes the first Federal Bison Protection Act in 1894. By then, the prairie that had held 60 million animals is quiet. The frontier did not end cleanly. It ran out of what it was built on. It is easy, from a warm room, to reach for a simple explanation. They did not know any better. But the Daily Alta California knew in 1852. North Carolina knew in 1746. Thomas Ashe knew exactly what he was watching in 1806, and he wrote it down clearly. The more honest explanation is that every society draws a line somewhere, and the frontier drew it differently. I keep coming back to one specific image. A man on a train in Kansas in 1873, raising a rifle to the window, firing into a bison herd crossing the open grass. The train does not stop. He will not retrieve the animal. He is not breaking any law. He is not being reckless by the standards of his world. He paid for this. The people around him are also shooting. None of them, in that moment, are thinking that what they are doing will one day be a federal crime. The frontier did not produce monsters. It produced people. People who built a world around what was available, called it fun, and never imagined that someone would one day write it down and hold it up to the light. The cleared patch of dirt behind the saloon is gone. The saloon is gone. The prairie town, if it survives at all, has a diner and a gas station, and no memory of what the ground once held. But Thomas Ashe's notes survive. The court records of men missing eyes survive. The railroad receipts listing 1,378,359 hides survive in the archive. The circle of men is still in the record. They were just having fun.